we sounding now? How are we sounding?
Minutes.
All right.
Right there.
All right, I'm ready. How are we sounding? That's better. Whew! Okay. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. So you liked the voice video then? There's like 50,000 views on that thing now. Whoa, thank you. Thank you for all the thousands of comments and the emails and the messages and the DMs. I'm a bit taken aback. I wanted to talk a bit this week about why I made that video, because I had many comments on there saying, I'm so sorry that you felt you had to make that to answer all the hateful comments. And actually I want to explain that's not the reason I made that video. It is a convenient side effect that you now know what the issue is with my voice. So hopefully when people make snarky comments, you will answer them for me. See what I did there? So there was a side effect that it was convenient to explain what's going on, and it was a useful and powerful story to get across a point about overcoming obstacles. But the reason I did it on a selfish level, I wanted to examine the story, thank you Jack, but I wanted to examine the story I'm telling myself about my voice. There is very little in this world that is absolutely a true fact. All we have are the stories we tell ourselves about what's going on in our lives. Your internal dialogue consists of stories. You're continually telling yourself stories about what's going on around you. He said, she said, what's happening in your life. You're telling yourself stories that bring meaning to the events. When something negative happens in your life, when something shocking happens in your life, you're saying to yourself, what's happening? What's happening? What does this all mean? And you're going through a process of taking that event and writing the story about it. What does this mean? You could be writing an empowering story. You could be writing a disempowering story. And if you notice carefully and if you watch the stories that are happening in your head, you sometimes notice that there are details that you're conveniently leaving out and other details that you might be conveniently adding in. And you're always putting a spin on the stories in your head so that they work to fit in with your belief and to make you sort of the hero of your own story. I've been feeling a little bit stuck in my journey with my voice, and one of my purposes in making that video was to hear the story I'm telling myself about what's going on with my voice, so that I could see it laid out in front of me on YouTube and be able to examine it and say, is this part true? Is this part really true? What am I leaving out? What am I adding in? Why am I stuck? When I heard myself tell the story, and particularly when I heard you picking up on different elements as you wrote your comment, and as lots of people wrote comments, and I noticed the patterns in what you were noticing and what you were not noticing, I was able to notice things about the story of my voice, playing down the story about why it happened. That whole story about my ex and the whole, and the emotional abuse. I don't like to call it abuse or trauma. I've been playing that down like crazy because that's kind of a negative part to the story. And clearly I don't want to concentrate on the past and, you know, the unhelpful things that have happened to me in the past. So I was trying to concentrate hard on the voice lessons I'm taking and the things I'm doing to solve this problem. That was working for me in the sense that I'm concentrating on the positive, but it also meant that, I don't know whether you noticed throughout that video, I was talking over and over about how it's a psychological issue, it's a psychological issue, it's a psychological issue, and yet I'm going to my voice lessons and Mark and I are poking at the symptoms with a stick, but we're not addressing the psychology very much. We're addressing the mechanics of my voice. I'm not actually addressing what happened and healing what happened in the past. I just went for my voice lesson with Mark yesterday, so we changed the way I practice a little bit and changed what we're doing in the lessons, And also I've called a hypnotherapist, and I'm going to start working with her and see what we can do about the trauma in the past and what's really going on here. Making that video has allowed me to look very objectively at the story I'm telling about my voice, and so that I could examine how I'm telling the story and what I'm missing out and what I'm missing at the moment that I could address. That's been a hugely helpful video for me. So let's bring this around to you. Tea, because I'm getting hoarse. What stories are you telling yourself about where you are in your life? What stories are you telling yourself about your sewing, about whatever creative artist it is that you do? What are you telling yourself about your ability? What are you telling yourself about talent and the time you have to work on it? Are you naming yourself as a perpetual beginner or a procrastinator? Or what story are you telling? What is the internal dialogue that's going on about your creativity, or about what's going on in your life, or about the obstacles that are holding you back? What stories are you telling yourself that are empowering you, and what stories are you telling that are disempowering you? Now, I want you to listen carefully to the dialogue that's in your head. Don't start beating yourself up. I want you to look at what's happening, to listen to the stories that are happening in your head, as if you were a scientific researcher with a clipboard. Interesting. And start to just notice and identify which of your stories are working, which of your stories aren't working. And notice in the outside world as well, like, what are the stories that other people are telling? You can hear the stories other people tell themselves because they'll tell you those stories as well. There isn't necessarily an objective truth to anything. There's just stories, opposing stories, about how the world works, about who you are, what people are like, what the world is like, what life is like. Just notice this week. What are the stories that we tell ourselves? Tell me in the comments below about an empowering story that you're telling yourself, a story that works, that makes you feel good and moves you forward. And then very briefly, I just want a vignette, not an essay, a disempowering story. What story are you telling yourself that doesn't work, that makes you feel bad about yourself? And I will see you next time. Thank you.